Okay. Should work.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah, it's an honor to have Anand, and we are in Instabase office for this podcast. And yeah, let me do a quick introduction. With like long-term friend, and Anand is CEO and founder of Instabase, which is one of the major AI startup. Just raised a giant Series D, like 100 million plus.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And also it's having all the top clients using AI from Instabase as one of the leaders in the space of like processing unstructured data with large language model, and has been a 10-year company that has been building very solid database technology, very solid AI technology before large language model become popular. And now it has the AI hub that is at the center of how to process unstructured data, like all kinds of PDF, Excel, and all the like enterprise workflow, and big companies on Wall Street. I don't know, so many Fortune 500 is using it. And I'll let Anand introduce more. And the last thing, I'm Bill, and this is David, yeah, co-founders of AI, and yeah, we are hosting this podcast series, and yeah, have like top AI founders coming to our podcast.
Yeah, we can give the floor to Anant.
Oh, no, thank you so much, and thank you for coming all the way. It's always great to spend time with the friends, and I know Bill for a long period of time. Great meeting you today. So yeah, I'm founder and CEO of Instabase. Before this, was a PhD student at MIT. Dropped out around end of 2015 to start this company, and since then, just have been working at Instabase. It has been a long journey, and our goal from day one has always been like, how do you process unstructured data? And the technology, was very rudimentary at that point in time. Like people would write templates and a bunch of rules, and then you had these classical ML where you define all the features and train a model. Program synthesis, a lot of people were trying that approach. Then transformer came. Then we were basically sort of building layout-aware language models, training the smaller language models for every kind of problems. And then now you have these large language models, which can, with some, in context learning, you can get a pretty good result. So we have seen like so much technology change over the last 8 to 9 years. It's incredible.
Yeah, so maybe one question I have is like it seems that like from the get-go you want to like process unstructured data, like as also like kind of the use cases and application you can like squeeze out from this data changed as the technology evolved, or like it's the goal kind of there has been pretty much the same and the tech just helps you do it like better and like more easily?
No, they are evolving in a very, very significant way, because at the end, use cases are only possible if technology enables you to build those use cases. And early on, you could do only very simple things like, can you classify a document? Or so let me first go to some basics, which is what is unstructured data in our definition.
Yeah.
So like any data that cannot be put into nice tables with columns and rows where you can have clear schema, we consider that like everything that can be put in that format is structured. Everything else we consider unstructured, right? It's very, very easy like to build things from structured data. You have a database, you have SQL structured query language, you know how to build application, how to do create, how to do retrieval, how to do the whole CRUD, right? Create, retrieve, update, and delete.
Yep.
So and then you have really nice properties for sort of like giving atomic transactions and those kind of stuff. So we already know how to do things with structured data, and that proliferated with every single application in the world uses it. For unstructured data, I mean, the problem is there is no standard way of doing anything. So everybody basically, if they have to do something in the use case, primarily just manual. Like if you have to understand legal document, you hire a lawyer. If you have to understand some, M&A, you literally go and read those financial stuff and make a determination. If you have to do lending, maybe you can do simple documents like passport or driver license or pay stubs or bank statement. You might train very specific model for each of those. That will work like 60% of the time, will fail 40% of the time, then you again give it a human review. So many of the use cases were literally just like very, very rudimentary. So then people kind of, evaluated the ROI or value from what part I can automate, even because let's say for certain parts, you're spending like 500 people doing that over like, several hours. Can I reduce from 500 people to like 200? That itself was a huge gain.
Yeah.
Now, with the change in technology, people don't even think about like, how much money I can save by not having people do it, but more about what is possible. In
Yeah.
real time now, I can basically do risk analysis. I can fundamentally change customer experience, like because AI can understand all those things, can do suggestions. I was talking to a bank, and all without taking a name. Now they are thinking of enabling entire lending process on WhatsApp.
Yep.
So you go to WhatsApp, you say, I want a loan. The AI will ask you, like, hey, can you submit those documents? It will process all those things, internal bank system and all the stuff. And then the whole thing gets closed on WhatsApp
Give
itself.
you a decision right away.
Right away.
Yeah.
Which is like insane, right? Like
insane.
Those are the things that would never be possible, like, without having these kind of technology.
Yeah, you went from like automating like a small piece of a workflow or a task to essentially like creating new experiences or like automating things end to end, basically.
Exactly. And we think like three major product surfaces that fundamentally AI enables on unstructured data. First one is deep analysis. Like earlier, deep analysis was very, very like high touch, very like heavy intellectual job. If you want to write analysis on market, you will hire experts who will go read bunch of things, do research and all that kind of stuff. Now, basically, you can do all of that things so quickly because AI will give them all the data and they'll do the final reading, change a little bit formatting here, and the whole report, which like would have taken a month, now can be done in like 2 to 3 hours. So the first major use case is deep analysis. Like whenever you want to do analysis, now AI is fundamentally changing all the experience there. Second is search. How do you even find the information? Like when you do legal discovery or when you get something like what all data that we have about this client that does not comply with GDPR requirements. If earlier you have to do that, you have to literally ask every department team to go find things, check bunch of stuff. Now you can literally like go and do
It's
this,
AI.
like productivity, like support. When somebody comes up with a question, support team will have to go ask an engineer or ask something else before they can give an answer. Now support team can type a question, AI can give all the answers. So the second major product surface is search. And the third one is automate, like the things where you literally had bunch of steps in each of those steps being done by some teams and that will transfer the result to some other team. Now AI agents can do that in a very, very seamless way. So the way like we see that sort of the market moving towards is eventually you will have one singular platform that will sit on top of all the unstructured data and will allow you to build anything in the form of either analysis or search or automate.
Super interesting. Yeah, maybe here I want to make a connection to Pin AI. So yeah, I don't know if you're very familiar, but like what we're building is like we call it personal AI network. So like there is kind of a protocol component that we can go maybe like deeper later as we dive. But then from the product side, it's kind of like a user facing product, like to consumers.
Yep.
And we call it like the personal AI. We built this protocol where like users can use data connector to like securely in an encrypted way, like use their auth keys for like different like Web2 services, like the socials, like Gmail, calendar, like your Amazon purchase history, Uber history, like all the context about you that we want to feed to AI.
Yeah.
And then the cool thing is that we're building this product form where like your personal AI has access to all this personal data, which is of course unstructured, and it can surface like your intent, like the things that like you would be willing to do. And then so far we have like two types of intent. One is actually deep analysis, similar to your first case, and the other one is automate some personal workflows around like scheduling things, like planning trips and things like that. We kind of leverage like external models for search. We don't focus in that part so much, but I can believe that in the future, like once the memory gets bigger, then like search will also become a use case for us. Is like I can see this parallel is pretty cool actually.
We actually need to do some high quality search plus like semantic feature engineering with natural language. So in the old days, so when you handle like structured data, like order book, when you do trading, you need to do like a feature transformations as like a trader with good instinct. Today, when you pull all this very raw unstructured data, like your raw like a Twitter data formats, or your like for example Robinhood trading history dump, some are PDF, some are like a API stream. You take all those data and essentially, if you dump all the raw data to large language model in context, it's still not intelligent enough to first like write Python code, parse them. It still requires some human expert who know how to like kind of take some useful features out. But it's kind of like one-shot semantic feature. One example is if we look at like your wallet trading history on like your crypto wallet, we see all these things, but you need like say, for example, a human expert to extract say how many like Solana major meme coins have you participated? How many like coins have you bought that are like on like Ethereum? There is like a lot of domain knowledge that are pre-coded, and maybe when the model pre-train it's not there, so that you actually need a human expert to write like natural language as code. As Andre was saying, that's like the most popular new coding language. We need those like light kind of expert knowledge injection, and then you build this personal memory for each user, and that's kind of the basically I would say raw material for further personalization of like do the automation of like do task on different intent.
And I think which is 100% true, which is like I think if somebody believes that AI would be able to give you all the answers on the raw data, that is never going to be true. Even human intelligence cannot give you all the answers from the raw data. What humans do is they go and execute some set of tools. Like there are basically tools that exist that allow you to give a specific kind of answers. The tool that lets you find risk, the tools that lets you understand like how it maps with certain statistical stuff that has happened in the past. And I think that what you have to use AI for is not for AI to give direct answers, but AI should be able to use those tools on those raw data, because then it can mimic exactly what human would have done with their intelligence, but it can be done at such a scale and such a speed that would not be possible. Exactly. And once you get that speed and latency, it fundamentally changes the whole customer experience, right? And what all you can do with it.
Super interesting. So one question I have related to this is like at Instabase, like you mentioned, of course, you can use AI like to automate like processes, for example, but you also use AI like in the very early step around like data processing for like data processing tasks. Like I'm curious around that first step, like how it is.
Yeah, actually, I just gave a talk at MIT, and I think the title of the talk was "LLMs is not the all you need." And the reason for that is that there's a great paper that you all know called "Attention is all you need." So what LLMs gives you is transformer architecture and then pre-trained language model, and then people are building a bunch of things on top. RAG is a very popular one, which is like, hey, I'm going to basically apply LLM on the data. That's one way. But if not all data fits into context, then you kind of like index all that stuff in VectorDB, then get an answer. But then people use even more smart techniques like intent classification, ranking, bunch of other things. So you have advanced RAG. But the point, I think, is that the right way of solving a problem? Because one of the things that you have, and you will actually check that, how do you encode complex things? Like in a document, you might have a checkbox. In a document, you might have these bunch of like 20-page long tables. You will rather convert that table into data frame and run data frame.query rather than like putting that into vector database and run the results. So we do a lot of work before even it goes to LLM. So for example, first thing you do is digitization. And by digitization, I don't mean OCR, or I don't mean basically converting into text. What I really mean is we have our own format for document called IBDoc. So IBDoc is our own format. And what it does is basically takes all these documents and automatically detects all of the building blocks that you have, like what is the text component, what are the image components, what are the table components, what are the checkbox components, what are the sort of like the other relationships or the references that it makes. And once you put all of those things, so that's basically, and so there are like 10 different models that is run in the first step itself, like because you need a table detection model. Because these LLMs are very, very bad at tables, right? Like it will miss something. It might miss cell number 25 when you ask a question. How do you know that? So basically what it does is the first step is doing all of those things. Once you have done all of those things, then second basically you do is, because if you're not dealing with one or two or 100 or 10,000 or a million documents, you're dealing with hundreds of millions. How do you even know recall? What if you miss something?
Yep.
So it might make sense for us to basically even figure out, like, because, like, let's say you want to scale something, so you can put that into whatever, like, let's say you start starting, you put that into 100 different vector database. Are you going to make a call to all 100? How do you know if one of them did not perform well?
Yeah.
Or how do you know if you missed one of the documents here? It didn't work that way, right? So basically what we do is, kind of like, we try to sort of like have a semantic understanding of the sod itself, like all the documents that might relate to certain topics or certain area. So you basically go into a specific area, because then you know, like, hey, most of the documents about these kind of things might be here. And then you create a separate, like, when the document gets ingested itself, we try to extract a bunch of those things and put those into database too. So now when a question basically comes, we run like 10 different queries. One could be the queries on the semantic query on the triples or knowledge graph. One could be the query on the metadata and the text that we generated. One is and based on that, make some vector semantic search and do things. And once you get all of those things, because then we can also figure out, oh, related to that topic, we found something in the metadata, but the result did not come from the vector search. Now let's make a second call, and that will include that. So basically, there's a ton of things that has to go, which will allow you to get to the answer that is accurate. So a lot of people think that, like, LLMs is all you need, but I think there's a paper by these guys from Databricks, Mate, which is what you need is compound AI system, or where you basically need a bunch of systems around it, where you can use the intelligence of LLM, but then you need to know what are the right tools to operate and what are the set of steps that needs to be done to get to the final answer, which is very, very important, because I think a lot of people just think that you put everything into RAG and you get an answer.
Yep.
Yeah, it makes a great demo, but it does not make a great production system.
Yeah, you want that accuracy
Yeah,
with a few nines. Instead of just like.
Speaking of the tools and our compound system, what do you think of the whole model context protocol thing? And IBS actually.
We need to ask.
So I think look, the standards are always good, but the success of the business, like, how long did it take for browsers to be like, a standard for even CSS or standard for even like HTML, right? Like, you will always find that certain JavaScript was not supported on Mozilla, and then you write some stuff for Chrome. And so the standards are good, but I see a couple of risks in the business world. So what these model context protocols do is they basically say everybody should implement certain things in certain standard way, so that model context protocol servers or whatever MCP servers that you create has the ability to interact with the user, and then accordingly on behalf of those users be able to operate those tools or query or whatever. What does this really mean is, now users are going away from the real system, and then interaction point is moving away from those systems to model context protocol servers or the frontier models or whatever those are. And that's fine for those systems that give you APIs, because you could access them anyway. But let's say you are Facebook. Would you want OpenAI or some other frontier model context protocol to access everything in Facebook? No, because they make the money by looking at ads on Facebook, right? Or if you are like Salesforce, or if you are Workday or whatever, are they going to be happy that they become completely disintermediated by some other basically system? It's great. Like, basically, of course, OpenAI would love it. Of course, Anthropic will love it. Of course, Google would love it. But I think that,
and then maybe like some infrastructure products or companies will also love it. For example, like we're talking about Okta, if you're providing a service which is already an API that kind of like already fits in that model of the context.
And Okta was successful because identity, like, people don't care, right? One place, like, identity is not your main product. But the user interaction and the user interface, but also, what is the central user interface then? Like, is it going to be that one single platform that is going to be implementing MCP server, or basically the whatever the UX is? going to be one interface for every single tools and every single system. So I see that it's a good standard proposal, but it's going to go through a ton of changes. And in its current form, I think that it does not serve every, it does not serve well many systems of records who are going to oppose it. And I think you will see some new things emerge over the period of time.
This is a bit forward idea, but what if this is a new layer of the internet where like essentially like you take all these social platforms, right? Like users do kind of the same things, right? Like what if these model context protocols, like I'm not sure how you get there, but what if it's another layer where like actually like you can connect things that are kind of siloed today, like for example Facebook and like Threads and Twitter, right? I mean, of course, like for business reasons, companies may not and may oppose it, but there is also this paradigm like that some of the power is shifting like on the user side, like the thing that you could do with like your auth.
I'll give you one example, right? Like this actually happened during this time of IMs. IMs are the instant messengers. So because there were a lot of instant messengers that were popping up, like Yahoo Messenger was very common, and then Google and all that. And then there came these companies like Meebo. I don't know how many of you have played with that. Okay. So there are companies like Meebo. There are a bunch of other where you could basically give them your credentials, and then that aggregate. Basically becomes the aggregate all of those, and you become. And in general, I think it becomes harder because the issue is, what if like, GChat wants to come with great interaction and great user interface, because now like they cannot do that because now everybody's accessing those messengers through some other interface. So the issue that you have is that internet is slightly bad parallel because internet does not basically disintermediate your website. So internet just only transfers the bytes because you still give the user interface back. So user interface is not given back by the internet, it's given by the actual owner of the website. Here, the issue that you have is in model context protocol, there is no way for people to access those user interfaces. So like, is this going to be the end of all user interfaces? And the natural language is going to be just the way everything would be. So that's why I think model context protocol will have some usage, but I just don't see that basically fundamentally changing every single system behavior.
Yeah, I feel like for enterprise, it's almost impossible for this to be fully adopted since you want a full controlled workflow. But I think in the more consumer plus developer community, I can clearly see. Basically, your question is like the UI UX touch point is actually the most valuable thing, right? Users eyeball and attention flow. No matter it's retail or enterprise, it's like the human touch point is normally the place that makes most money in an internet business. So that part is the most furious competition. Today, it's more like the competition of like a Cursor or OpenAI versus Cloud on their like desktop or mobile API or Manus. This is like a bigger fact. That's like VC investing in that because that's kind of in the future to add. But in the back, you have a large language model foundation model layer. And behind that, you have MCP servers from older companies like Okta, Stripe. But you also have, I think, those 1%, $1 billion company that is literally one domain expert that is too lazy to go to market, and they just build all of their expertise into like expert inference prompt and wrap it together with the tool they use, like Bloomberg or whatever. Like say a bunch of like a bank broker report, and they are a very good financial analyst. In the old days, they need to send out emails to like do their own standalone lifestyle business. Now they can actually host it on the internet, just like Surf API, right? It's a very small team, but they are able to make so much money over the last 2 years because everyone need to do search, and Google search is not that good. That they are the best reverse engineers that reverse engineer Google.
Yeah. I mean, I think we'll see. This is going to be interesting. It's very, very hard to really, So there are certain cases like for flight search that has worked, right? You go to Google and say like, show me flight or Expedia or something. But I don't know. In many other cases, like because the actual owner of the product want the users to directly interact with them, not through some intermediary, and that's going to be a challenge.
Makes sense.
Yeah. but I feel like same ways that OpenAI have both API business and also the ChatGPT main business. Apparently, most of the value is like as an internet company accrued to the like a human facing part, but they also want other people to use them as like infras. So I feel like in a lot of the domain experts that have valuable data, valuable knowledge, but do not have the ability to go to market, it kind of makes sense that they just become the backend that feed their information to large language model. Large language model is more like the compiler or like processor that eats all this domain expertise, and then it gets funneled into different like a front end, like this MCP client or whatever. It's like UX in the future. Maybe it's like I don't know. Who knows where the UX look like, but I think that's a harder battle since the machine-human interface is such a hard problem. But in the backend, everything is like you have tools that are talking to large language models, right? So relatively easy. In enterprise, it feels hard because there is also this SVP one ready to like basically get the other SVP fired, and they have no like there is so much things that they want to control. They want to fight. They want to like control the flow.
Yeah. Also because I think that there is just so much sort of data governance and the regulations, like UK data cannot give in the US and all that. So basically now you might run with many different like LLMs, one sitting in the UK, one sitting in the US. How do you know that US one is not sending data off the US, anything to the UK guys?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's just a ton of things that has to be, work properly for this to work.
Yes. Have you worked on any of the more, I guess, non-enterprise touch point where you do not even know who are your customers and they have some domain expert data that can do things?
So so our customers are mostly businesses, but we don't care like whether they are our direct customer or indirect customer. So we have a lot of indirect customer where they use Instabase AI Hub, and then they go and sell to a bunch of other people, and we don't know what use cases they are building and all that. So we have a number of customers who basically just say like, hey, I want to buy whatever, 100 million credits from AI Hub, and then we are going to use that across like 20 of our customers in healthcare or banking or insurance and so on. There are a good number of customers where we have no idea about the use cases. And then second is, of course, we work with government, and we also work with the departments of the government that tends to be very, very secret. And
there's still people working there.
So
it's just
we don't know anything about like what they do with the product.
Okay.
Oh, one question is like you are talking about this AI hub.
Yeah.
Maybe like, do you want to like tell us and also the viewers like what this is like?
What AI hub is? So I'll give you a historical viewpoint of what was our journey with unstructured data and why we even needed AI hub. So when we started with unstructured data, people gave us a bunch of these complicated stuff, right? Those PDF and Word and Excel and PowerPoint and all that. And like, how do you deal with it? And the techniques at that time were, I'll tell you how rudimentary they were. So people would literally write, the first common technique was templates. So like people would say, here is a template for US passport. And the way you extract data from US passport is you go and look 10 pixels below from the top and 10 pixels from the right, and then draw like 20 pixel box. God. And whatever number that you get is the passport number. So brittle, but people do that. Second common technique was like, hey, all the US passport is going to use the same word, so I'm going to look for the word name, and whatever the two or three words that is right of that is your name or something like that. Third one was people were trying to just simply define the features, like hey, try to
manually,
get like and then build some models. And then fourth one was very common technique called wrapper induction and program synthesis, where you basically can you through mathematical induction, can you learn the wrapper? It's like, have you seen those tools? One of the very common one called Beautiful Soup. That uses wrapper induction on the websites, where you can just simply say, let's go to the wrapper code by child of this stuff, and then within that you will find this child and this text, and that's where your answer is going to be. And so people were trying to do wrapper induction with regular expressions and all that. So those were the techniques. So we spend a ton of time on program synthesis where instead of trying to do ML, because you know that you can like if you have to extract from website, you know that you can always be able to do that by doing some beautiful soup, hierarchical navigation, like if you can go through the whole DOM.
Yeah.
So we were like, can you just generate all possible programs that can be written, and which program will give you the answer based on 2 or 3 examples? And if we know it's the same website, you can automatically figure out the program. So that was our technique at that time. Then transformer paper came, and the BERT was the first language model, and we tried that because BERT was a sequence of tokens, and that did not work on these documents. We were very disappointed. Actually, I sent a note to all the investors in 2019, which is like, maybe this problem or general purpose document understanding problem is unsolvable until or unless somebody basically figures out somebody figures out AI complete problem solving, which is then literally AGI, right? AGI is basically you can reduce every problem to the AI problem, and as long as you have AI completeness, you can solve it. So then we basically started kind of tweaking the BERT model, but so basically in the BERT model, every token you basically encode things like the word, but also the position of the word in the sentence and things like that. And we said, what if you also encode, because let's say you have bank statement, what is sequence of tokens? You have a bunch of random numbers, right?
Yeah.
The attention of that is some column that is written on top, which is aligned on the same y coordinate, rather than so we said, what if you also create a pre-trained language model where you're not encoding just the position of the text, but also the x and y coordinate. And that, so basically we trained that on like 110 million documents or something like that, and the results were amazingly
Changed
good.
everything.
Yeah. And we were like, and the Microsoft actually wrote a paper on that later, which is called, and we wrote like 2 or 3 papers. So it's called Layout Aware Language Models. And that gave great results. So we basically were so happy that this is the state of the art, this is working. And and we launched that around beginning of 2021. So we were happy, we were winning so many deals. But then this was around November 2022, ChatGPT comes, right? And we were like, we send a simple PDF. So at that time it didn't support images and all that. And we asked the question, it gives you the answer. I don't think it supported PDF at that time, but I could copy the text of the PDF or something like that and ask the question, and it will give the answer. I'm like, is this end of the company? Because it's the future where I can literally send stuff to ChatGPT and you get an answer. And then we started trying those, tables and all that, and that's what we wrote this, paper called LLMs is not all you need. So basically, then we said single document or small scale problems will be fully solved with these. So where is the next set of value? So earlier, the value that we provided was you take any kind of document, we will figure out how to classify them, like what type of document it is and how to extract them, right? And that uses token classification architecture. So extraction is not really extraction in the prior model. It's actually classification, because you take every single token and you try to classify to which particular field it belongs to. And that's how you basically get the extraction. And these were generative models, the GPT ones. And so we were like, what are the new things that now can be done? So not too much worry about what it makes obsolete, but what are the new things that you can do? And then we say, what if you want to do deep analysis on millions of documents or billions? What if those documents have tables and checkboxes and all of those? How do you solve that? That cannot be solved directly with the model, because you can't represent them as the sequence of tokens, because sometimes you might have to run some query or some other stuff. And how do you do multi-step planning and all that kind of things on the private data? So we said okay, one major use case is going to be deep analysis. Second is, one of the big problems that we always found with all of our customers is, how do I even find the document that matches my query? So that's very, very hard. So search is pretty well understood problem. And then automation earlier was basically writing a workflow that says, when document comes, OCR it, classify it, extract it. We're now your automation could be much, much, much more advanced. You can automate this entire lending process, which is, as soon as things come, basically directly go pull from those systems, do those things, then call this other system, because now with AI you can also operate the tools, right? Yeah. So basically we said, instead of just doing simple unstructured data processing, Now you need to build a singular platform called AI Hub, because at the end, the
Got
tool
it.
execution or these complex stuff is not just needed for automate. The same thing can be used for analysis too, because analysis also need to call some tools, right? Because you might have to call some Oracle or Snowflake, or because Snowflake might give you much better results than like doing LLM on the whole day. Also, it would be way too expensive if you do directly with VectorDB. So my point is, how do you build a singular platform which is going to sit on top of all your unstructured data, and then going to open up three product surfaces: the automate, analyze, and search. And
Got
so
it.
that particular platform that powers all those, we wanted to give it a good name. Right? Like Instabase looks like legacy name, so let's call it AI Hub. So that's how the
This is
AI
the
Hub
next
name.
floor.
So
Like
that's
move
so
up
that's
one
how,
floor.
yeah. So that's how AI Hub name came, and then we do all those three things.
Yeah, this is super interesting because essentially what initially was seemingly a threat, like these
Yeah.
GPT models that commoditized what was kind of your competitive advantage,
Yeah.
then gave you like the opportunity to say, okay, what else do we have? And
Yeah.
maybe like the fact that you were already sitting on like large databases and you were already quite sophisticated in handling this mass of data also is what became your edge. Is
Totally.
that fair to say?
But we had to rebuild the whole product from scratch, because this is going to open a very different kind of user interface, very
Got it.
different kind of way to doing things than like earlier. So we had this classic platform, and that looks very different than like, so we decided to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. And this is a completely new product that got built, but we made it compatible in the sense that older model could still run on it. So that way our customers who had built anything in the past, we can migrate them to AI Hubs. But we rebuilt the whole thing, and we had to do this rebuilding of the product 3 times in our entire history. The one was like when we had to make a big switch from program synthesis to the layout of air language model, because that requires annotation and all that stuff. So we had to rebuild a bunch of those things, and then we had to completely rewrite the whole product when we had to rebuild AI Hub, because the whole user interface is very different, right? Now, because earlier everything had to be done by some clicks, and now you can do a lot of things in natural language. Like for example, if you want to do some validation, earlier somebody had to write some code. Now AI can generate that code automatically. You can run those validation by default. So like we had to just rebuild the interfaces that is much simpler, much easier to use, much less intimidating. Because earlier it was very intimidating, like tell me the hyperparameters for that language model, what those things should be. And
you actually need ML engineers. I remember like during those times that you mentioned, like 17, 18, 19, I was actually at Lyft on the like ML engineering and like marketplace teams. So like, we were also like trying to adopt like the first like family of Bert, Roberta, and like all those models. Make them work, and we have like maybe huge teams just focused on like the feature engineering.
It was just a bunch of hyperparameter tuning, right?
Yes.
Like you have to basically just like just try different hyperparameters, see which one gives you the best result, and then lock that in, freeze that, and then run it. And we don't even know why those hyperparameters work. Right? Number of iterations, number of like I don't know how many those things existed, right? So
crazy times. One thing I'm curious is like how much do you get involved in like the product development? Like maybe for these huge changes, I imagine that like you're quite hands-on, but then you also have a big team that can lead this, or like you prefer not to get involved. Just set the vision and let them run.
Unfortunately,
never happened.
No. Actually, I have not written a single line of code since 2021.
Okay.
So this is like how many years now? 4 years. I've not written a single line of code, and I think our developers and engineers would not like if I write code, because that would be so buggy, or would not follow all the coding guidelines. I used to write a lot of code until 2019, 2020, but I got more involved in sales and so I'm still deeply involved with how the product should look and how the product experience should be, but not too much in the like what the modules should be and what is the right techniques. And so we have really much smarter engineers who kind of like do all of those things. But I still want to see as a user what the product would look like and what the experience should be, and more importantly, what is the underlying architecture which allows us to sort of build on this vision that I don't want to build, automate, analyze, and search as 3 different products. I want those three to be built on one singular unified platform. And that basically means, like, let's say you want to understand tool registry. That should not sit into automate part. That needs to sit in the platform, because maybe sometime search might need to also execute some tool. What if you want to execute some snowflake analysis tool in order to give the right answer? So it's very, very important. Like, and how do you make sure that identity, access control, like all of those things are done in a way that allows enterprises to get the right answers and right results. So only involved with product, and then a little bit of architectural decisions,
Yeah.
but not on any day to day.
Makes sense.
But are you considering yourself like the main product of final experience of debugger? Like if it experience don't feel good, you are the person that need to be.
No, so I used to do that earlier, like early version of first version of AI Hub, but we have some really, really good product people. So I think Clemens, who is our head of product, he comes from Databricks, and before that, he was product manager for TensorFlow
Oh.
at Google. And then we have some really, really strong PMs like Hanako. She was my chief of staff. She understood like a lot of the details, so I have a pretty strong opinion on how the product should look. So I think we have pretty strong product team that basically puts us pretty hard on simplicity.
I see. This is very interesting. I observed a little bit over the last 2 years how you manage. You're a single founder, right? It's really,
Yeah,
really, really intense. And how do you trade off between delegate to strong people on the things that you think they can versus you need to hands on and being the final like a guard keeper of the quality?
So there's no one right answer. It depends on the one lesson that I've learned, and I've done that very poorly, I think, in many areas, which is it took me a long time to get really good head of product. So basically, until 2020, mid of 2021, I had to be involved in every single product decision. But after Clemens joined, then I'm rarely involved. So it depends on what is basically, and that was very humbling and hard experience. That when you hire a really good leader, the key test that you hired a good leader is do you stop worrying about those things.
Yeah.
So basically, for example, like with sales, like if you really had a good leader, you don't have to then too much get in. Like once you just trust them that they will make the right decision. And today, I think our product is at a point where I trust people that they will make the right decisions. Engineering architecture, I still get involved a little bit, and so yeah, it just depends on the leadership. And I think once you get the right leadership, you can actually get hands off.
I see.
But you know it, that whether you can get hands off or not. So and if you haven't, then I think you should ask the question: did you hire the right leader?
Yeah. Do you see what you build? I actually use the AI Hub a lot, right? Since I was building this like financial PDF parsing and did a lot of work, and like, oh, actually I shouldn't.
Mhm.
It's like it's such a long journey, and you guys have done. So I spent a lot of time actually learning your product, and then recently I was just thinking, okay, if I use Cursor, it's kind of like there's a lot of external plugin on like people build good things, and the Cursor is really like detail oriented on making the experience right. Do you see your product AI Hub becoming more like the Cursor for kind of this enterprise of unstructured document user, like that two differences?
So I don't know if you've seen there is a section on our product called Hub, where earlier you could only see some pre-built applications like whatever passport and tax forms and all that. But we felt like that's not useful because maybe a schema that I have built might not be useful for you. So you have to go and rebuild from scratch, which is not good. But now actually for most common things, you don't really have to build. You can just go and take any of those apps from Marketplace and quickly say customize, and it creates a fork for you. And then you can modify it. So, and also you can publish your stuff that anybody else can use. So yeah, so we are building a kind of like, I'll call it more like a GitHub kind of thing rather than, or Docker Hub or whatever, a hub where you can find, and we use the word instead of like apps is one way of saying this, but we call this like solution accelerator, because you already are starting from 7th floor rather than first floor. Yeah, because now you can just take it, compose it, modify it, do those kind of things. Then so yeah, we are actually thinking about that. So you will see so all of our focus, because all our prior customers were in Automate, so our first focus was literally building the really good Automate interface. That our homepage is not when you go there, that's not the right UI actually. So we are coming up with a completely new design for our homepage, our hub page, and our workspace page. All of those three should come in, like hopefully next like 3 to 4 months. But the reason why we focused on initially just the document workflow part is because all our customers on the prior platform, they were doing those. So you want to make sure that you finish that part. It's just one of the things in company building is you want to do so many things, and then you have to just focus on one and leave everything, even though that you're like, no, that's so important, I want to do that, but then you say like, but there is this one most important thing, and you just focus on that first. So given that now we have reached at a good maturity point on the build part, now you will see the homepage and all that change, the marketplace, the hub, it will be completely refreshed experience coming in like 2 to 3 months.
But on the marketplace, how do you, I mean, in an enterprise, probably you don't need to incentivize people, but assuming it's like more free, people who don't know each other, collaboration, there is a major incentive problem. Why would I build my secret cool like template that parse this special like financial docs to other people? It's kind of like algo trading is all about how to parse like market data, right? And people get paid millions.
Yeah, maybe finance is not the good example.
No. So here's the point.
Fears.
Here's the point. So I'll give you two different reasons why this is useful. The number one is we sell to a lot of very, very large customers. Let's say even at JP Morgan. At JP Morgan, for example, it's useful for like there are 20 different teams exactly does the same thing. So it's very, very useful now just for within a company itself because you want to do the reuse. Second, I think is at some point we are thinking of adding a monetization component. So because then, like, let's say if you build something and you say like, hey, it's $30 or whatever, or maybe like every time this gets called, I get 1 cent per field or something like that. And if that is the case, now you want to do that because then you basically can make money. We in the beginning, the reason why we kept it free is because we wanted to bootstrap it with a bunch of things we build and make it available for everyone. And I think that whether you would like to believe it or not, there are enough number of people who deeply contribute to open source. I mean, like GitHub is full of a lot of like really like sort of very interesting and very, very powerful software libraries. Like how many things you can find.
And the most robust things they actually come.
So I think a lot of people just love open source. They like to do that. Like many non-profit organizations and all that. I think we just want to create that ecosystem and hopefully people can benefit from it.
Actually, this is very relevant for us as well, since like I talked before about like the protocol we're building behind, and that's like also open source. And like one of the design paradigm that we have like with Pin AI is that we build the personal AI as an AI product, but then we want to leverage these like external AI services, right? Like if there is the personal AI is like very good at coming up with like some intents based on your personal data, but then how do you solve those intents, right? It doesn't have all the capabilities, but we kind of want to bootstrap. Like we are starting to build the first kind of agents that solve these intents, but we want to do the same thing of like can we bootstrap like kind of a marketplace or an ecosystem of like different developers kind of building on top. So I'm kind of curious, like have you seen like some early signs of traction of like people like building these open source tools, and kind of are you gonna have like kind of an explicit strategy to like get more developers on board, or you may rely more on like your customers and like affiliated parties?
So I've seen some good success within an organization, but I've not seen cross organization yet, and that is because basically, but I've seen like within at JP Morgan, basically they build things and share with everybody else. I see. But I haven't seen like JP Morgan would build something for Citi or for Bank of America. So there is competition, right? They consider everything as an IP. But this said,
but this is does it mean that if I am like a JP Morgan team, I build like some of these tools, then it's open source, but within the company, like space? Okay.
So we've seen that part, and that part itself was very, very useful. And now, given that we have to, a lot of our customers say, you might have solved the same problem, but for this bank, why don't you have this? So we decided to put at least many things we built, so now all our customers can use from it. So that's basically level 2. In general, this is something Martin Casado told me. I don't know if you know him. He's one of the partners here in Recent. He's the one who invested in Instabase. And what he told me is use cases precede the product, product precedes the platform, and platform precedes the ecosystem. So don't try to build an ecosystem until you have a platform. Don't try to build a platform until you have a product. Don't try to build a product until you have a use case. And I'll give you the definition of each of those.
Yeah.
So use case is a use case, a particular problem, particular workflow you want to solve. Product is a product that allows you to do that. So like Microsoft Word is a product, but the use case is writing
letters,
or a document or whatever, right? Or basically downloading, printing or something, writing and printing something. That's the use case. So that's a use case. Microsoft Word is a product. Platform is where the value can be created by someone other than you. So Microsoft Word is not a platform because Microsoft has to build that product and you can use it. The platform is, let's say, GitHub, where GitHub by itself doesn't provide value, but somebody else's code, which is not written by GitHub, provides value for somebody else. So basically, the whole idea here is that the value is not created by direct use of your product, but somebody else is creating the value that can be used by someone else. So basically, value is created by somebody other than you, and that's when it is called platform. And once you have the platform where the value can be created by somebody other than you, then you can figure out how to convert that into an ecosystem or marketplace and things like that. And I think the common mistake that all people make is they start with, here is my app store.
Who's going to use that?
But first you have to figure out what is the use case that it has to solve. And what is the product that solves the use case? Then now on that product, instead of selling directly to the consumer, can somebody else create the value in that? So I think that we have to solve all of those pieces. And at that point, the ecosystem starts working. So we have figured out the use case. We have figured out the product.
Products.
We have figured out the platform because somebody else can create a value, which is good. What we have not figured out yet is the ecosystem part. And once we have it, we will let you know.
Yeah. That's the question I was trying to fishing for, right? How do you establish that, okay, you pay $1,000, now you get to use it for a month, or like you pay every time you call, you pay 1 cent, like automatically.
Yeah, so we haven't figured that out yet. So we have only figured out until now the platform part. So we know for certain that value can be created by somebody other than us. That part we know.
Yeah.
Now, how do we convert that into
validated.
Yeah.
So going back to my original MCP question, actually, I was thinking recently, do you see this path of like what you build as this like a kind of templates or like a MCP server that contains very valuable like information, for example, Bloomberg Data API, plus some know-how on like how to actually like interact with the Bloomberg APIs and all that as a kind of skill packages and make it more like a commoditized product that people are willing to pay for. Just like today you buy like other commodities or you trade stocks. Right?
Yeah. And that's a question I think which we have to really deeply understand is, are there use cases and workflows that can be best solved by us? Because we can do that only if people want to solve that problem on our platform. Because if people go to Bloomberg Terminal to go and ask those questions, if we are just providing that, that's not very valuable. But if that value can be created for KYC app, where basically you are getting the state, so then you can do that. And maybe like once people are doing that, can that become a component for something else? So basically when you're building a platform, you have to ask this question. The platform is the place where the whole has to be much, much, much bigger than sum of the parts. Because if you're just aggregator where you can call this, call that, which you could have done this directly to. If you're just if your platform is just sum of the parts, it's not valuable.
It's also hard to attract or retain people that build on it because they don't get too much additional value from building on you.
Exactly. So the platform has to be where the basically people want to use the same thing because the value is much bigger, not like twice or thrice, but 100 times. Yeah. But basically something of that magnitude bigger, and that's where basically it will be successful. So now coming back to the MCP, I think the MCP as a protocol would be useful. I'm not saying it would not be useful, but I think that the value of that has to go to some platform that is going to provide the sum of the parts much bigger than each individual MCP calls.
Yeah.
And actually, that protocol is so low level that
Yeah.
there could be multiple platforms
Yeah,
that
yeah,
get
yeah.
built, but we still like
Yeah.
early days.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting counterexample, right? I thought about exactly what you were saying, and then I realized, oh, actually, yeah, like Nasdaq
Yeah.
as a stock exchange
Mhm.
does not. They have liquidity network effect, but it does not satisfy the like saying that the whole world economy of all the top tech company, all the economical behavior happen on Nasdaq, right? But people speculate or invest or do whatever on Nasdaq. There is liquidity premium, and like because all the investors come here, you list here, and then a new company lists here.
That's the value of the ecosystem. So once the ecosystem was created, then everybody will want to come because you provide them distribution, right? Like Amazon Marketplace, AWS Marketplace is a great example. But before AWS could build a marketplace, they had to build a really good product. And what were those products? I'm going to give you a general purpose compute system that just works without you needing to have your own data center or storage. And then once they figure that out, now we can run the whole cluster. We can run your whole data center. That's the second part. Now the third is there are a bunch of useful apps in these data centers, like databases and all that. But if you put that in my marketplace, that becomes directly available in anybody who builds a data center. And that's how the whole marketplace got created. I don't have a lot of history of NASDAQ, so I don't know the specific case, but I'm pretty certain that they must have started with some really good use case, which means that if you put on NASDAQ, you have this value that you would not get on NYSE or something, and then they will get enough of those people to put that, then it just, starts becoming the...
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, I guess also probably there is a legal protection of like as a listed company, you have to source your revenues in this way back to the value of the company. I think that's one thing that is pretty hard to solve in our discussion, right? If you are like these two builders and you are not building it on like say your platform, how do you capture the value of that?
Yeah, GitHub is a great example. If you're open sourcing something, if you're not putting on GitHub, you're not getting distribution, right?
Yeah.
But GitHub initially did not start that way. GitHub initially started as a collaboration tool.
Yeah.
If 5 people want to collaborate on something, I'm going to give you a really good UI where your pull request and all that stuff basically much easier to manage. Then once they do that, it's like, oh, but these, like when people collaborate, they might want to use some other open source project or some other thing. So what if you put there, they are more visible? So basically and that's how the whole ecosystem got built. But it had to start with something where they did that one part so much better than everybody else that it created the value there.
I see. You basically need to build a needle and then break the thing, and then you start to enlarge it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I feel like that there is also a difference between like when you work with big business versus when you work with retail. Right? Have you thought about on the retail part today, it's like a Meta or like TikTok, they were extracting all this personal data. Of course, they also provide good value. And when they have all this data, the way they extract is providing you good service, but in the meantime, run ads to monetize your like eyeball attention, right?
Yeah. I mean, so basically that, and I'm sure I don't know if you've spent time listening to Larry Page at Google, and he had such a deep understanding, which is never confuse product with the business. Product is not always the business. Rarely product is a business. So like, for example, in Apple, when they sell you the iPhone, the product is a business. But Google, product is not a business. Google search is not a business. Ad is their business. Search is the product that you use. And their goal is to sell a great product so that they can get enough people that are staring at Google search. They're basically so that they can put the ads in. And if you look at most of the consumer-focused companies, very few have the product directly as their business. So good examples are Spotify, Apple. What else? I can't think of very many.
Maybe ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is like charge $20. So
yeah.
It's not bad, not a very good business, right? It's kind of like a not very differentiating of user value.
Yeah. But very few consumer companies where product is because consumer don't want to pay. Consumer want things for free.
Yeah.
So basically, for most consumer product, you have to figure out you need to have very deep understanding of what is the product and what is the business.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting for us. And so we were thinking, okay, like consumer data is clearly one of the major like a fossil fuel energy that is there, and like one of the courses is we need to build an engine to like realize it and make every like user to actually reclaim part of the value rather than all being captured.
Yeah.
And then it's a natural problem, right? Like how assuming user wants free stuff and assuming user are not like crazy about their privacy, then what's the angle to create like a needle, right?
I mean, I think most of the millennials, they want a good experience. The privacy is not their number one priority. But at the same time, I mean, I think there are other forces that want you to prioritize privacy, which is government and all that kind of stuff. So you have to find,
and especially in the age of AI, like we are having like deeper and deeper conversations with this system. Like actually the other day I checked my memory on my ChatGPT app. If you go to like security personalization, you can check all the memory. I got scared. Like this thing knows like so much, like no one else in the world. Like
you can actually like ChatGPT, you can say like, hey, tell me about my persona, and it just tells you a lot of details. You're like, it's very interesting.
But you know that you can actually check like the memory.
Yeah.
So like there is a lot of scary stuff in there, and I turn it off immediately. So I think I mean like privacy usability has always been a trade-off. I think each age brought their own. Like I agree with you that it seems that at least in today's world, like maybe it's not a big concern for more mundane things, but like in places where like the stakes are higher and there is like economic value at stake, like for example in the case of like your enterprise customers, etc., definitely people care. And I think in the future, like if AI is going to unlock this more micro, like more smaller scale, like value, like trade and extraction, then I think people are gonna care a bit more.
100%. And that's why one of the things that we are building right now, and we haven't talked about that in a lot of details yet, which is called federated AI agents, where the idea is not that you basically have an AI agent in MCP which accesses everything, but rather you create different data networks. And then just think of like, what if you had these AI agents that are part of the data networks, but they cannot be accessed from outside. However, there is a communication protocol that allows, along with the identity, where it will broadcast the question, which is like, who will potentially give me the answer.
Got it.
But then these guys can choose either to participate in that or not, because identity is getting passed. And given that now they can access the tools, that identity gets also passed to the tool. So for example, if Oracle basically can tell you, I don't recognize this one, so they will not even give you the answer. So we are basically working this.
Or I don't have the permissions, like exactly. There is like some policy
Exactly. So we are trying to create this basically hierarchical network of, we call this federated AI agents, because we know this works. And how do we know this works? This is how humans solve the problem. Like how do you get an answer in a large organization like let's say JP Morgan? It's basically, if Jamie Dimon wants an answer, he's going to send a note to all the direct reports. The direct reports will go and ask the direct reports, and nobody sends data, right? Basically, depending upon which person has access to what tools or system, they run right kind of query, and only the part that is relevant gets sent around and eventually get aggregated to get the final answer. And I don't think that the world would be very, very different when the intelligence is not in the humans, but in the AI, in the machines, because machines would have the ability to execute tools too, but not a central machine should have ability to execute all the tools. Not one human has the ability to execute all the tools. Machine has the ability to delegate that to somebody else, and then they can only do within the confines and within the agency that has been given to them. Because all of the human world works on this very simple identity principle, right? You have principle, you have action, you have object. So certain principle can make certain actions on certain object, and eventually I think you will have these AI agents that basically become part of the principles of the identity system, and there is going to be the whole access control mechanism, which will tell you which AI agent or which principal can access which objects and can perform whatever actions, and then you can federate the whole thing and get an answer.
Super cool.
Yeah, that's right. Did you see the Google's agent-to-agent protocol? It's like
I haven't seen that.
It's very similar to the web.
Okay.
Yeah. So Yeah, I think this is especially in enterprise. I think this is how the world will go. I feel
Exactly.
like
Because the point is also like, let's say, because then this also allows you to delegate those to different agents, because Salesforce might be able to build better Salesforce agent than anybody else because they understand their internal detail. So it doesn't make any sense for MCP to get all the data and put the stuff and all that kind of stuff, but they should just be able to delegate that stuff to the Salesforce agent. And I think that's what the protocol is more likely going to work than a single like agent should be able to, using some protocols, to be able to access everything.
Yeah.
But if you think about like this federated AI model, it actually scales beyond private organizations. Government works the same way, and then if you go beyond even the economy, is kind
that's
of
how the whole world works. That's how the whole world works. Everything is federated. No single identity has access to everything. It's like they just have a communication protocol where they can communicate to somebody else, and somebody else, based on the identity that is communicating, can execute certain actions. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the society level is very different. That there is a central unit of price discovery. It's like something. For example, this like company is worth more, and the people give more resource, and like more things flow to it, which doesn't really exist within like enterprise, right? In the Jimmy Diamond case, it's like power structure determining how.
Power structure determines.
I mean, there is no markets in most organizations.
And you have to understand, like, basically, what is the behavior that has been successful in the past, and how do you basically either fit into that behavior, or you completely define new behavior that you can think can change existing one. There are only two ways to succeed. Either your new protocol or new system has to fit in the behavior that we already know works, or you completely define new behavior and expect that people would adopt this new behavior. One of the two has to be true.
Yeah. So do you see a federated framework where it is more like the stock market vibe with like a price discovery?
I don't know. I mean, basically the point is, because the price discovery is currently just determined by a number of distributed transactions where every single individuals are making decisions based on what everybody else is doing. And I think with AI, I mean, you can do some of those behavior and pattern stuff much faster, but I'm sure everybody else is also doing the same thing. So maybe you can just expect maybe market to resolve to some number pretty quickly, because now the key point is, like, even today, right, every trader sort of determines their algorithm differently, right? If their price works, is great. If it doesn't work, then they lose and somebody else wins.
And they die.
So I think that in your case, I mean, you have to figure out like how, because you're not just like, there's not going to be one algorithm, because everybody's trying to game the system in a way that benefits them. So eventually, I think that market is still going to decide the price, and the way, like, the sort of the how quickly you can do things, even network speed, all those things became important factor in the high frequency trading and all that. I mean, AI would become an important factor, that how each of those basically parties are able to use those in such a high speed and in a way that gives them the right answer. I mean, I don't know. I've not done a lot of trading, but I hope the market rules would still apply.
Yeah. I'm asking this because I was thinking this concept. Vitalik talk about this, like information finance, right? Like how do you value this like high quality things like prediction market, or like essentially you can think about the expert call transcript that you guys process as like kind of contain some information that when someone do a query to this varied agent.
You can also fool the system by somehow basically flooding the system with some information that you want other people to take and do, and then you do something else.
Yeah.
That's why, like, in this info finance type of mechanism, there is always some economic incentives that like ensure that like you can, it's costly for you to like produce info. You cannot like civil attack, or like you cannot like
Right now, I mean, basically just like yesterday, right? I mean, anybody who is following Trump's tweet that it's his time to buy.
Yeah.
I mean, that, people made a lot of money. So,
Yeah.
so you can.
Yeah, it's impressive that something like this can happen actually.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was just saying, like, it's so hard, right? Like, I mean, I don't think you can build any AI model that would basically just take one tweet and based on that can fundamentally change the decision. Maybe.
I mean, if you give it enough prompt that now on the market, the only thing matters is whether the president
says something
back
or
out or not. And I mean, you need to give it a lot more than like what Trump says. Trump says a lot of things and it doesn't move the market. But this thing is essentially like basically depending on his decision, he can destroy the market or not. And he decides to back up, and everybody like, wow.
So I mean, I don't know, man. Like I think that might be so many different things. This is not my area of expertise.
Yeah,
but
I think if you move away from like the financial market, and think about markets as like as an institution of society, right? Like connecting to what we were saying before. I think like one other way that you can see what Bill was asking is like we're talking about this federated AI in a way where actually the mechanism according to which these AI are allowed to interact is fixed, right? Like you fix some roles, and then like there is some communication patterns between each other that are fixed. And that's an institution, right? It's essentially how do you represent like the JP Morgan institution in like the relationship between the AIs that are employed there. But then I think the other interesting question is like, at the same time, can we set up markets for AI, right? Because that's still federated AI, but in the first case where it's like this rigid institution, actually like there is not much selection in the sense that these AI, like maybe if you are in a fixed role, you are not incentivized to grow. Like what if like in those roles we put like some competing AIs, right? And then you have like the best like paralegal, right? That is not just one AI. Is like different people can compete to do that job, and like the kind of best model will emerge, like kind of similar to like what happens today with algorithmic trading. Now with these AIs that are able to produce measurable outcomes on different domains, could it happen there as well?
Yeah, I mean, so the federated model that I had, where people will not compete, where AI would not compete with other AI, everything was helpful because you would. So now the one key difference, and I think there is a friend of mine who was thinking of building a company in a slightly different domain, but similar idea, which is gaming. So now, basically, his whole idea was, if you remember, when did Toy Story came, the movie, like late 1990 or something. So all the films that people used to watch were basically real actors, the feature films. So when this idea that people were coming up with, which is like, we can have the cartoon characters that will be in the movie, everybody laughed at it. Like, who wants to watch cartoon characters, right? Like, I mean, it makes no sense. And then, of course, like, they created this movie. Disney became such a big company, Pixar Animation, and, and I think the Disney. So the idea that this guy had, he was actually an Instabase alum, and is what if we create, like, you have NBA and NFL, what if we create a franchise where the players are, okay, now AI is so good that you can create very real looking players and all that, and they can make the right kind of, and now you have the AI coach that are going to train these players. And then you can build a franchise where basically everybody is buying, like, this is, Golden State Warriors, this is whatever, Boston, and this is Celtics, and this is Miami Heat or whatever. And now, but different people are training these AIs, and then they play. So AI players of San Francisco Golden Warriors are playing with the AI players of Boston. So, and in order to win, if AI was predictable, this would make this move, then that's not very useful, because then you need to have where these people can train these AIs to perform better than this one, and this guy will try to perform better than this one, or they will try to understand the behavior and patterns of this team, and they will try to understand the behavior and pattern of this team. And I think that maybe, like, if you can create, so and this is completely divergent example, but if you can create basically, let's say, a stock exchange where anybody can, use AI using your protocol or using your engine or whatever, but then they have the ability to train it in a way that allows them to do better than somebody else, and somebody else can understand the behavior from somebody else and can do that. And if you can create a massive exchange, or, like, that would be a massive, massive, massive market. Whoever goes and builds this kind of like underlying sort of the platform
Structure
and
to
the
coordinate
engine
AIs.
and all that stuff, because now it's not like OpenAI deciding what the answer should be. It's basically the people who are configuring those models and are giving the context or feeding the information, whatever the things are, and that determines everything. So it's going to be the key, because it has to be some information asymmetry. Because if everybody has the same set of information and everybody's going to make the same decision, that's not useful. Like market will just go to deadlock, right?
Yeah, that's really cool idea. Yeah, right. Like this, it's like there's competing component, but it's like a human in the loop, so that it also provide a ladder for the AI to actually grow through this game, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think that's moving. Maybe like 3, 4, 5 years down the line, you will have these games being played by AI, and people might want to watch them because they might be more entertaining. Maybe those AI humans might have better physical. Might have much better physical abilities than these real humans, and
they stop shooting trees and they start playing again. They go back in time. All right.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks, Anant. Yeah, it was a great conversation, and thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, see you next time for all more like fun podcast. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.